Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of the Growth Playbook with myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Beaulieu. I'm introing this video again because we have once again a new guest on our podcast. Today is joining us Steve Baker from the Great Game of Business. I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts and comments. And please don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to be regularly updated when we come out with new episodes.
I am so excited about today's podcast, Kim. This is going to be, this series, I should say. This is going to be great. I've known Great Game of Business. I've known Steve for years, and I've known Jack Stack a little longer. And man, this has been so life-changing. We embraced this at our former place, and I've seen companies really win with this. This is not theory. This is a practice that works if you're serious about it. You can't just pretend, and you can't play open book and withhold. I'm sure Steve will get into all that. This is a real thing, and if it's done the right way, you're going to increase retention, you're going to increase output, you're going to increase a sense of belonging, and you're going to just make for a much better place where it's not just I'm working to live. This is a place where I'm really accomplishing something. That's the power, I think, of what we're going to be talking about as we go through the discussion here with Steve. And if you don't, Steve, it's all on you because I think you should be able to do
No pressure.
No
I thought we were here to
pressure.
talk about recipes, but
Yeah, it's all up to you now. But I am that excited, Kim.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. So, Steve, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to sharing everything that it is that you guys do at Great Game with our audience and just continuing to spread the word as I truly believe in the power, just as Alan just laid out. So I appreciate for you kickstarting our conversation, Dad. And thank you, Steve, for joining us today.
that's a real pleasure. Alan, it's good to see you. Kim, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, I couldn't be happier because to me, this is the message that we're trying to send out to the world every day. And by reaching, your viewers and listeners, I just think that we're adding to the community.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So I've put together some questions in preparation for today. So hopefully you've done your homework, Steve and Dad, and are ready for all the different questions I'm going to throw your way. But kickstarting just for our audience here, I'm starting with the basics. Just explaining to our audience, what is this open book management that Dad was referencing when he started talking?
Well, open book management is a bit of a misnomer. Jack Stack, our founder and CEO, is known as the father of open book. And so it infers that if you open your financials, everyone's going to care. That is not true. What I want to say is that, let's start with the origins of it. Jack Stack was not out to turn people into accountants. What happened is he and 12 other managers, way back in 1983, scraped together 100 grand to put down a down payment and save their jobs. So 119 people could eat, and keep their mortgages and that sort of thing. What he learned by going to banks and saying, I've got 100 grand and International Harvester wants $9 million for this factory, that's a pretty bad loan. And so he learned a few things. One is, if you have a terrible loan, you need to find a terrible bank. And that they are speaking a completely different language than we are. They had all the specifications of a great engine. They were remanufacturing engines for International. And the thing is that the specifications of a great company are totally different. You can be the best technician in the world and still go out of business. We hear it about it every single day. So what Jack is known for is opening the books, but what people miss is that you also have to teach the numbers, because people not only do they not have access to financial numbers these days, for all time, but also even if they had access, what would they do with it? We don't teach our people the financials of the business, and yet it's the one thing, the only universal that I can think of that we all share are the financial statements. And that goes way back to 1494 when Luca Pacioli, a Franciscan friar in Italy, popularized the income statement and the balance sheet we still use today. So when I'm speaking about open book management, I first try to break it down and say it isn't just being transparent. Transparency is worthless without education. And so our approach is very simple, and it's been going on for over 40 years, and that is let's teach people the game they're in. Let's keep score and make promises to one another. And finally, if we do all of that, we've got education and knowledge and acumen combined with accountability and ownership. What do I get for it? And that's what we call the stake in the outcome. In the early days, you got to keep your job, but within the first couple of years, they started to figure out, oh, wait a minute, if we don't pay 18% interest on $2 million of dead inventory we bought, we could create a bonus program. So that's the power of it, right? Is letting ordinary people have access and understanding of how a business makes money and generates cash, and then ask them to participate. It's not rocket science.
Well, it's not rocket science because rockets can blow up, but it is an educational process though. It's not easy, is what I want to say. I mean, this is not 2 days you got it done.
True.
It is a process. And correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding, and this is the way that I did it and the way that I've seen other places do it, open book doesn't mean every detail. You don't know how much, the manager makes. You don't know how much the president makes. It's not like it's completely open like you're the auditor.
Yeah, and nor do we want it to be, right? If
Right.
you showed me a chart of accounts for an average company, I think my face might melt off my skull. I just don't want to see every detail, but I need every number represented, and I need the experts for those line items to understand their line items. So we're basically giving the person closest to the job the opportunity to be the expert, which we should do, but they need to know how they fit into the bigger picture. So Alan, you're exactly right. Every number is represented, not every number is detailed. So salaries and benefits as one line item that we will share, but we will not say this is what Alan makes and this is what Kim makes and this is what Steve makes. That's divisive.
Yes, it is. And I like that word a lot too, divisive.
I hope I'm saying it right, but I'm from the Ozarks, so just go with it.
Kim, this reminds me in some respects to traction. There's a relationship here to traction where people have their rocks and their metrics to hit, and often it's revolved around something tangible. In traction, it has to be tangible. And using these numbers makes it real tangible. And reading the book and talking with you, that's the key, right? If somebody's on the line, there's got to be something tangible. It's not just do more. It's what are you trying to hit?
Yeah.
And that's where it makes a difference.
The beauty of traction and EOS and I might even expand it out a little bit bigger to EOS, scaling up, 4DX. I mean, you could name all the popular operating systems. And what I love about it most is Gino Wickman says everybody's got a number, and he kind of pictures a number above everyone's head. The problem is, not problem, the difference is with Great Game of Business is we all have line item ownership, we all have a number, but we also understand it's not just a metric, a KPI, or an OKR. It also, there are metrics. We measure everything. Believe me, I work for Jack Stack, for crying out loud. He's a manufacturer. He literally says, I can measure a gnat's ass. I don't know how, but that's what he says. Here's the thing. We know that those metrics work. And as the old gurus like Drucker and Deming would say, if you can measure it, you can manage it. The difference that I've seen, though, firsthand is that in the Industrial Revolution, what we did is we divorced people from the financial outcomes of their own metrics. So we're saying, just do the numbers, get this many engines down the line, write this many lines of code. The numbers will take care of themselves. Yeah, they will, but what's the outcome going to be? So the difference between an EOS or a Great Game of Business would be that they do a beautiful job of saying, here's the vision, this is where we're going. So I've got the why. I love that. And here's your number. Here's how you fit. And by the way, my wife works for an EOS company. She's a speech pathologist. Here's the downfall, in my opinion, or where we get a lot of business from EOS practitioners because they go, what's next level? How do we go to the next level? And that is, okay, so now you've got the follow the action and keep score, right? As part of any game. And as I pointed out, there's the understanding of the rules. So we're teaching people the marketplace. We are teaching people the financial outcomes of what they do and how to move the number in the right direction instead of just expecting them to figure it out. And then finally, there's that third component, like with any game, you've got no one teach the rules, follow the action and keep score. And finally, that last one is a stake in the outcome. What's in it for me? So all the other systems that are so good, they miss the education part and they miss the rewards part. And that's what I would like to say is that they're all great systems and you'll be much better off running a system than without. So I'm just saying, if you want to go next level and get people engaged in a whole different way, where they are thinking and acting and feeling like you are as a business leader and a business owner, that's where the great game comes in.
And the why it matters to them is key, because the rank and file, if I'm allowed to use that term,
Yeah.
uh, it's like, so I'm going to make you richer. What do I care? You know, I'm going to make the people who own this place much wealthier than they are now. Uh, zero incentive in that, obviously. I'm not
Yeah. And our
making
approach is,
myself worlds better, my world better. I'm not making the world better. So I want to do both of those things, and that's where the beauty comes in, right?
I
And
think
you don't have to
so.
be an ESOP. You don't have to be closely held. It could be a bonus program. It can be how raises are determined. I mean, there's lots of things that you can do outside the ESOP world and apply this. Um, is very broad ranging because it answers those two big things. Why is it good for me, and what good am I going to do in the world? It's good for me, doing well in the world. Tell me that. And
Yeah.
this does that. That's
Why
this,
can't we do well and do good? That's
that's
a
correct.
huge question, right? We think
Yeah.
that business is that lever that Archimedes needed, right, to move the world was to actually be able to say that we are the new educators. It's up to us because people aren't getting this universal language that the banks and the financial systems and business all speak. Yeah, it's
Well,
pretty big.
it's actually the message these days is businesses are bad, CEOs are bad because it's all capitalism. Capitalism puts people down, puts their thumb on people, and provides for that income disparity and all the rest of that. And what you're doing and what we're trying to do is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
We're not Ben and Jerry's. That's a different approach, that we are looking for a way that people can work together for a common good, common benefit.
It's funny that you mentioned Ben and Jerry's because so Jack in the early days in this would have been the late 80s, early 90s when the book came out originally, he used to travel with Ben and Jerry. They would end up at the same conferences and like
Oh,
they'd be over, smoking something um, let's say marginally speaking, and they'd be talking business and everything else. I think it's cool because there's an example, right, of another way to run a business that's different, that this mission based that talks about the why. And I love the fact that what you talked about is I'm going to make you richer. Alan, as soon as you said that, I was thinking about this mantra that I have going in my head all the time. And that was SRC, our parent company of the great game of business, was founded on save jobs. When they figured that out, it was to create jobs, then create wealth and share the wealth with those who created it, sort of like a giant jawbreaker. And I love the fact that even 40 plus years later, it's still about jobs. And to me, the proof is name me another company that has gone 40 plus years with consistent profitability and never a layoff. That is insane.
yeah.
So now we're 2,000 people in 11 different companies. And to me, that's all about opportunity and about giving people not just a job or a living to do, it's really a purpose. You could say, well, remanufacturing engines, boring, dirty, dangerous, whatever. But, accidentally, we're huge environmentalists because we keep stuff out of the landfills. So it's really kind of amazing to me. It's about tying that mission to our people and understanding that it isn't just that I've got to earn money to make a living and make rent and all of those things. It's really, how can we show them a better way? Something will take them beyond the employee mentality and take them to the owner mentality.
Okay, I want to come at this a little different way now because we just presented a really nice, warm, fuzzy picture and method that works. But now you have an employee on the line or writing code or doing forecasts, whatever, who just has attitude. You know, you guys are blowing smoke. I don't believe this, or it really is just all about them. There's nothing about the common good that they're interested in, and so obviously there's a cultural non-fit. In the world you describe where there's never any layoffs, what popped in my mind is that doesn't mean there's never any terminations.
Bingo. Yeah, you're right. Well, the goal is to keep those jobs. So when I joined SRC and specifically the Great Game of Business 20 years ago, when you become an executive, uh, and I would say probably at almost any level of leadership within the business, we don't talk about it like normal people. So let me start with this, and I will answer your question, but we're charged with something of, hey, remember that hire you just made? You've hired him for life. What are you going to do to keep hours in the shop? And it isn't about manufacturing, it's about any group, right? But the idea is we're taking responsibility for someone and their family by saying we better have a plan in place. And so, first, I'll appeal to someone's higher level of thinking if they're not a good cultural fit. Because I have found, Alan, and please argue with me if you think I'm wrong. I always run into people through my whole career and my whole life. There's always somebody like this, arms crossed. They're standing in the back of the room like, stupid meeting. What are they trying to do? Sometimes our biggest um, defensive, what's the word I'm looking for? Someone help me out. Like the people who just don't want to do it might be our biggest converts someday.
Oh yeah.
There absolutely is a reality, and that is, I'll call it cultural Darwinism. A high performance, transparent organization does not fit a lot of people's go to work strategy. And so, yeah, a lot of people will self select out. Other people, the way we look at it is we give them a lot of chances, right? We're going to give them coaching. We're going to get them on a PIP or whatever, improvement program or something to help. And if they just don't want to do it, we actually, and I've seen this over and over, we'll actually try to help them get a job, preferably with our competitors.
Yeah, I agree, and there's some great Jack Stack stories about that. I'm sure you too. I just know a couple of Jacks, but really, if the short of that is you're fired up, you're just fired.
It happens. I would even say that at least within our own businesses, that we might be a little bit too nice, trying to hang on to them and that sort of because of our thing. But I do know, like Southwest in the 90s was a client, when they were coming up, and their whole thing was, we'll before Netflix and Google and all those folks who will pay you to leave, they were very much about slow to hire, quick to fire. The idea is get them out if they're toxic. And I do admire that a lot. I think we're a little soft on that here because we want to give people that chance. And frankly speaking, with our approach of we got to teach you business, sometimes we blame ourselves for people not getting it because that's our thing. We're supposed to be teaching you. Maybe you don't have enough information, or maybe something doesn't happen. Heck, when I was hired, I was 40 years old, 41, and I almost would have said, I don't know if I need health insurance. Isn't that crazy? That's how financially ignorant I was. And it's not that I was dumb, it's just that I had my needs and I didn't really know, right? Everyone else just said work harder, work smarter that I ever worked for. So I hope you don't mind me being that vulnerable, but to me, that's where you make the breakthrough is to say, I can do some things really well, but there's part of this I don't get. For me, it was the financials. I didn't know anything about them because no one ever trusted me with them.
Well, you people certainly have a heart, and you have a heart, Steve. I'm an economist. I don't have one. So it's you're fired up, you're fired. I mean, it's pretty it's pretty straightforward. And
Well,
41's pretty old, right, Kim? I mean,
Yeah, that's
I
nice.
Yeah, it is what it is. I guess what I'm saying is, even if you mentioned ESOPs earlier, Alan, there's so much of this that I'm passionate about. I just was at in Philadelphia at the NCEO meeting, National Center for Employee Ownership, and I know you've been there many times. I will tell you that, half my time was spent speaking to young people, encouraging them to learn everything they could about the numbers and about the way business ran because of my experience. And I said, if you put this information in front of me when I was 20 and showed me what was possible, I still don't know that I would have embraced it. But man, if I had someone who was consistently educating me and making it a part of what I have to do is not just make the widget or write the code or get that billable hour, but also to learn the business. I mean, I got to tell you, sometimes I think you got to shoehorn it in there, make it, force it a bit so that people can go, oh, there's something bigger. And it's not going to be a lottery win. It's not going to be playing the market and day trading. It's going to be a whole lot of start early and don't mess with it. Let it grow, right? I don't know if I'm making sense, but you can tell I'm in my giving back mode at this point in my life.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
And what you were saying, Steve, actually touches upon a question that I had because hearing the beginning parts of our conversation and creating a culture of significance and purpose, if you will. Um, how do you do that? I guess is my question because it sounds really good, but what are the steps that you guys find yourself taking regularly? Like I know you and I have talked many times where it's consistent communication, the internal communication, and all of that. But just for our listeners and stuff, what recommendations do you have for them on how to go about creating that kind of a culture of significance and purpose?
Well, start with the why. You guys already said it. You give them purpose. It doesn't really matter what you're in it for. I remember speaking to a guy, and this is a long time ago. And I don't know if you've ever been to one or seen one, but a chicken plant where they actually raise chickens. And I mean, it's a farm, right? But it's very concentrated. And I'm like, whoa, the smell was incredible. And he goes, that to me smells like money. So it's sort of like, he was taking care of his family and his people's families through this farming. And to me, as an outsider, as a city boy, I'm like, "Oh, boy." The thing is, it doesn't matter what you do, but show people why you exist. And I think if you look out there, if you want significance, if you want people to feel belonging, are you creating a culture where people want to stay? And to me, it isn't really the stuff that we do, and it isn't the bring your dog to work day, and it isn't nap rooms. I mean, all those things are awesome, but it's like, do I like these people? Do I like why we exist and what we're doing? And can I find myself a home here? So to me, significance is very individual. And if you remember Zig Ziglar from the 70s, he talked about every person wants to be significant. Andy Warhol said it differently. He said, everybody's going to be famous for 15 minutes. And then people took that and ran with it, right? The thing is, we don't want 15 minutes of significance. We want a lifetime of significance and then to pass that along to others. In fact, I think that would help really close that divide that we've been feeling growing and growing through the years because so many people feel marginalized. What if work was the one place that you could feel belonging, feel significance, feel like I am valued as an individual and somebody wants what's in my head, or someone's willing to invest in me because I'm new to this and I don't know it. So to me, maybe it's even the way that family dynamics have changed through the decades, that maybe this is also kind of a family. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you read a lot of sociology and things like that, they say that people join gangs because they didn't have a family to belong to, or they needed the sense of belonging. To me, that belonging and significance does connect. Maybe it's not interchangeable, but it definitely dovetails.
Kim, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't, or no, I do not mind. Yes, you may ask a question.
Thank you. Well, I know you have a lot you wanted to get to too. Um, how- if you know, or could rough out, what percentage of American businesses use something like, if not exactly Great Game of Business, something like it?
Yeah, so Robert Half Management did a study years ago that assumed, or no, I'm sorry, not assumed, but posited that 7% of the US population, meaning the workforce, had access or understanding of the financials of their own employer. 7%. Now, I'm not, you're the math guy, Alan, so I don't know. I think you're more likely to die of a bee sting than get the numbers for the business you work in. To me, it's just so tiny that we have a huge opportunity and a huge challenge, right? Is to reach businesses, but also business leaders who are willing to be vulnerable enough to say, this is how we make money. This is how we generate cash. Here's how you connect to that. Let's get this together. Just a lot of people don't want to, they're afraid of it.
And I don't have an answer for this one. I have only things that I've experienced personally and in people that organizations I've been blessed to know and be part of uh, through the consulting and stuff. People who do this very much tend to outperform the marketplace. Um, they're ahead of others because of that involvement. So this is not just a feel good, it's a nice thing to do, be a good human being thing. This is to create something for everyone where everyone benefits more than they would if they were working for, John Doe who just come to work, do your job and get out of here kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's
I do
real.
have something to add to that, Alan, because just being at NCEO, Lauren Rogers, the executive director, put some numbers up on the screen. This is just last week, saying that that transparency, and we'll just call it open book, when people are educated about the business they're in, that in the ESOP world, people who are transparent and teaching the numbers outperform their peers by about 15% on profitability. Now, I will tell you, we've done our own study and we've looked at that for years to make sure that, are we really making the impact we think we are? And the averages are people who actually play the great game of business. And let's go out a little bit further and make assumptions that there are people we don't even know who are doing this, right? But people who are teaching the numbers and making it a part of that not just the work style but the lifestyle is that people those companies outperform their peers by a factor of 6 on profitability and a factor of 2 on revenue. I think that's powerful, and a factor of 3 on employee engagement if you look at like the Gallup numbers. Now, that sounds all doves and rainbows. I'll go back to what you challenged us with earlier, Alan, which is, does everybody perform like that? No, but we're talking about folks who play with discipline and have frequency of those weekly financial huddles, and they're rewarding people. I know that our turnover and our retention rates far exceed our industry metrics when we look at SRC's 11 companies.
I'm just going to, in case somebody's replaying this, your turnover is not exceeding the industry. You're doing much better than the industry.
What an economist. Thank you. Yeah, I am an art major, so please, everyone who's listening,
What did you
take
say? What did
heed
you
of what
say?
Alan is saying.
And I want to throw something in here, and ESOPs are very important to me, and I love ESOPs, but there are some people who hate ESOPs. So I want to make it plain that this does not have to be an ESOP. Everything we're talking about can work in a closely held or a caring organization. It is not in any way mandatory that you're an ESOP. You and I just really believe in those and love those, but I also really like closely held companies and family companies that treat everybody like they are in an ESOP without them actually being in. Because I've known people who have sold their businesses. They were not an ESOP. They sold their, one guy, Fred's Flower, I think it was, sold his business for a couple $100 million, if I'm remembering the story correctly. And he gave a ton of money to the 600 people that were working for him, or 300, whatever it happened to be. He had no obligation to do so. They had no ownership. It was just, was such a good human being, and they were doing a lot of what we're talking about. They helped make it what it was. So he was spreading, spreading it out to them.
I
It's
love
not,
that. I mean, look, those are the stories we hear all the time.
I'm
When
sorry.
you talk about ownership, I,
You're
I wonder
boring, Alan. I know what you're saying. I'm boring.
no. I mean, it's like you're speaking right to my heart because I'm going, man, that's the right thing to do. Now, he did it without any structure, so to speak, like an ESOP, which is all ERISA governed and everything. But employee ownership doesn't guarantee success either. So maybe 15% or so of our clientele are employee owned. And I will tell you that that percentage probably isn't going to change in my lifetime. It's just not that common in the United States. Employee ownership represents about 0.001 is the number. So it's 1 in 1,000 is what I'm trying to say. And you can translate that into real math as you do so well, Alan. But 1 in 1,000 companies will share broad-based employee ownership. The thing is that thinking and acting and feeling like an owner does not necessarily mean you have equity in the business. And so we're trying to create an ownership culture everywhere we work,
Right.
meaning just what you said. Maybe there are other benefits. Maybe we do have childcare. Maybe we do tuition reimbursement. Maybe we have great benefits. Or like the flower person. I mean, I just love those stories where someone said, "You helped me build it. Here's something that will potentially change your life." What's missing there for me that makes me a little sad is give me a whole bunch of money when I was younger and financially illiterate, and I would have done a lot of fun, very dumb things with it. So what I love is at a company that practices great game of business or is really teaching their people how numbers work, when they're better with money at work, they are so much better with it at home. And so we hear all these stories about people paying off mortgages or volunteering for a community service in some way. The impact is like ripples. I just love that. And so I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about it, because it changed everything about my life and it changed my kids. I was joking around earlier by saying I'm an art major. There's one of my paintings. Well, the thing is, I forbade my children to go to art school. Two of them out of the three are professional artists now.
Oh,
But the difference is that they make money, they own homes, they're awesome people because I swore that I would never let my children suffer the way we did. I'm sure you said the same thing about Kim and about your other kids. The thing is that I want our kids to be able to do whatever they want to live their dreams, but I want them to know the one universal that everyone has to deal with. How do you get a mortgage? How do you get better credit? How do you keep an eye on your car insurance rates and stuff like that? You got to shut me up, Kim, because I'll go all day on this.
No, I think this is great. You're just actually making me think to something that we did over the weekend. We took Chloe, our 14-year-old, to the bank and she got a debit card and we had to explain how all of that works and where she was like, "But you're taking my money away." Nope. And this is how it works and so on and so forth. So it was just making me think how much I agree that education in the finances is very important even at a younger age.
It is. And so my advice to you there, Kim, and this goes for everybody listening as well, just like the great game of business in any company, in any organization, and just like at home, you did that this weekend, you never get to stop. You will always be teaching. And that's what you're going to be doing when you practice this wonderful thing that has been created and proven over 4 decades is you, and Alan, you alluded to this. It might be simple, but it ain't easy. It is a
right.
commitment and it is a discipline that you've got to keep coming back to.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in for today's podcast. If you have any questions for Steve, please feel free to reach out to me on my website, www.v2amarketing.com, or directly at Steve's website, www.ggov.com. We appreciate you tuning in and stay tuned for part 2 of today's episode that will be coming out next week.